Hello everybody, welcome to Us Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference in how the video performs in the YouTube algorithm. It's been a couple of days since I've uploaded, but I'm here to talk about James Harden because Shams, or I guess Woj, probably both of them, but I think Woj first, tweeted that the Philadelphia 76ers have essentially halted all trade talks revolving around James Harden. Obviously, this previous, I guess that's still the current offseason, but you know, it's been a while since anything's happened whatsoever. In the offseason, James decided that he did not want to be in Philly anymore, which is the third time he has done that in the span of just a few years. But unfortunately for him, because of the fact that it is the third time he's done this, not only just asking out, but asking out to a specific franchise. When he left Houston, he specifically asked to go to the Nets. When he left the Nets, he specifically asked to go to the Sixers. And now that he has specifically decided he wants to leave the Sixers, he's asking to specifically go to the Clippers. So because of that, teams that are not the teams that he's specifically requesting to go to really are not going to bother trying to trade for James, especially given that he is on a 1-year contract. But on top of that, the Clippers really don't have a trade package that's particularly compelling. Really, the best case scenario that the Sixers can walk away with is like Robert Covington and Norman Powell, which isn't nothing, but it's not, you know, replacing James Harden level production to say the least. While I have theorized that Tyrese Maxey and a little bit of Tobias Harris as well could step up to bridge the gap a little bit offensively to make up for some of the difference of James Harden not being there, Norman Powell is still not going to fill the void, even if it's a subsequently smaller void, just because Maxey and Tobias are doing more. So from the Sixers' point of view, it's like, look, if we trade James, we're not really getting anything that good. So we might as well just not trade James and have him for a year, and then he can decide where the hell he wants to go once the offseason comes around. And I do respect that from a franchise perspective. I understand why they would come to that conclusion. I just have the concern of this did not go well last time. I'm not talking about from Brooklyn to Philly, because from Brooklyn to Philly, that seemed to happen in a relatively short notice. But after James Harden asked out of Houston, it took a while for him to actually get moved. And as you may remember, he ended up going into training camp and even the first like 10-ish games of that season with the Rockets. And he employed basically every tactic under the sun to make sure he got the hell out of there. He did the, I mean, I don't know how much you can actually directly say he did, because a lot of it's like conspiratorial, but like there's genuine reason to believe the dude was out there in a fat suit. Like, just straight up, it was insane the difference you would see in photos of him like warming up versus what he looked like actually on the court. He did have some good games when he actually did play with them, so that you know, probably helped not reduce his trade value too much. But the overall point that I'm trying to arrive to here, he made a problem for them to ensure that he ended up getting moved. And given that this is James Harden's third time asking for a trade of this nature, I can't imagine that he would decline himself any chance to do something similar here. I don't see any reason why James would not dig right back into that toolbox of manipulation to end up where he wants to be. So I do have that concern for the Sixers of how much is James actually going to be willing to even play for your franchise, especially given that he is going into his mid-30s now. That means that he has less and less time to just spend on a team he has no interest in being on. So could get a little bit desperate in that regard. And a desperate James Harden trying desperately to get out of your team, get away from your team, man, that could be some ugly shit. But to speculate about what the Sixers could look like this year, you do gotta wonder if he isn't necessarily going to make the biggest fuss, but it's still pretty clear that he doesn't want to be there, how's that going to affect the chemistry of the team? How's that going to affect how James Harden himself plays? Is he going to maintain the same level of production, or is he kind of just going to not give a shit? Even though he did ultimately put up good numbers with the Rockets in those games that he played before he was traded to Brooklyn, he still clearly didn't give a shit. That was the thing. His whole body language was that way, not really making hustle plays or anything like that. It was just kind of like he was like, I like, shooting the ball. I like making cool plays, so I'm going to do that. But every other part about being a basketball player, while yes, James Harden has never been that invested in the other parts of being a basketball player outside of just scoring the ball and setting up his teammates, either way, he has gotten to a point where he was pretty good at those things and would do them when he had the energy to give a shit. But that might lead to his defense falling off quite a bit, him not really being willing to make hustle plays whatsoever, not really making any kind of extra mile effort, which is something that you're going to want if you're going to go far with a team, especially with your second best player. If your second best player just is apathetic and really does not give a damn about the result of the game and just wants to be somewhere else, that's going to affect you in straight up just how you play on the court, but it's also going to affect how the morale of the rest of the team is. No one likes playing with a player who doesn't want to be there, and we've seen that happen before. The most recent example I can really think of is Anthony Davis playing on the Pelicans when he was playing 25 minutes a game because they didn't want to damage him for the trade. And I believe for the last game of that regular season, he wore a "That's All Folks" shirt, which is admittingly funny, but not the best environment in the world for winning basketball, to say the least, and the Pelicans were very much not a winning team under those circumstances. So yeah, I wonder if James could ultimately serve to be more of a distraction and more of a negative than anything else, to where it would ultimately become addition by subtraction just because he's somewhere else. Is James Harden, or is Norman Powell and Robert Covington as good as James Harden? No. Is Norman Powell and Robert Covington better than James Harden, who doesn't give even a little bit of a shit and is causing you a bunch of problems, both on and off the court and in your locker room and morale-wise? Probably. That's probably the case. So I could see James ultimately getting his way 10-ish games into the season, just like he did with Houston. However, given that he's not nearly as good and much older and on a one-year contract, so his value isn't the same as when he was in Houston, he might not have as much leverage as he thinks he does here. A lot of teams really don't want to touch James Harden with a 10-foot pole because he goes somewhere and then does not commit and then ends up being a huge pain in the ass for whatever franchise trades for him. He was a pain in the ass for Brooklyn. He's now been a pain in the ass for the Sixers. Who's to say a year and a half from now he wouldn't be a pain in the ass for the Clippers? So from that reason alone, I do think there's a much stronger chance that James Harden ends up playing out the entire year in Philly, and you would hope that he could be chill enough about it that the Sixers can still be ultimately better for having him than for not. But I guess we can only wait and see. I definitely know it's not the most ideal circumstance, but I don't know. It could end up proving better than what trading him would actually be. We can only speculate. But yeah, until then, I guess we can just wait and see. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye.